So one of the first steps of research is measurement. And so when you're looking at research, you can also assess the quality of others' measurements. And so this lecture will be about what are good forms of measurement and what are some bad forms of measurement and how exactly we understand measurement. So the main criteria for measurement quality are called reliability and validity. And so reliability is when we get consistently the same thing every time we see it. So, for example, if there is a cop on a speed trap and they are measuring every time there's a car that's going 60 miles per hour, they measure 60 miles per hour. That is a reliable form of measurement. For example, if the speedometer is off and it's not saying that when they see a car that's 60 miles per hour, they're instead way varying in the measurement, then that's not reliable. So valid is when it is actually what it is. So if the cop were to, every time it saw 60, instead it said 70, that's not valid. It's reliable, it's consistently saying 70, but it's not valid. So these are two words that you're going to be experiencing a lot throughout the course. So you really need to make sure that you understand them and the differences between them. And this visual sort of gives you a sense of something that's valid and reliable. It's right on target. It's measuring exactly what it is, and it's doing it consistently. So the exact definition of reliability is whether a particular measurement technique repeatedly applied to the same object would yield the same result each time. So it's sort of similar to the word reliability. And so we don't really know, especially with some tools that we use, what really the truth is. What really is it that we're measuring it without the tool, right? So reliability cannot necessarily ensure accuracy because an observer's subjectivity might come into play. So some ways to deal with reliability is the test retest method. So we make the same measurement more than once. So that way we can ensure that we're getting the same thing each time. There's also this thing called inter-rater reliability. So multiple people take the same measurement of the same instance and then they compare the results. And then there's the split half method. So you make more than one measure of any concept. So you might see if the different measurements that you have are different, even though they're measuring the same concept. Validity is the extent to which an empirical measure adequately reflects the meaning of the concept under consideration. So it's if it's actually getting the right thing, not if it's consistently getting the same thing, but if it's actually getting the right measurement. So if you're really measuring what you're saying you're measuring. And like I mentioned before, sometimes we don't know what that specific thing is without the measurement tool that we do use. So demonstrating validity can be more difficult than reliability. And there are different types of validity. So face validity is the accuracy of the instrument in measuring on face value that which is intended. So if it's suitable to your aims. So an example is the sentence length prescribed by law is some indication of crime seriousness. It has face validity. But there might be a limitation. For example, in that example, there may be people who have committed very severe crimes, but maybe they have a lot of earned time off from their sentence length. So that might not be the best indicator in that instance. And another big issue is if the respondents know what we're trying to look for, then they can sort of say things in a way that's what we want to hear. So it's faking good or faking bad. Content validity is when we're trying to assure that the possible range of meanings that could occur are all inclusive in what we're measuring. And so an example is like the quizzes that I provide you all. If I'm providing you quizzes, but I'm quizzing you on things that were not actually in the content of the lecture, then I'm not having content validity. So that's an easy way to remember that. And this can be also difficult when we're using a scale. We want to make sure we have the range of the scale consistent with all the possible outcomes. So construct validity is making sure that your measurement, what you're actually measuring, is reflective of the constructs that you're dealing with. So an example is that depression is measured based on a collection of symptoms and indicators, and you want to make sure that that's consistent with the idea of depression. So if I were asking you a bunch of questions about, let's say, not necessarily how you're feeling, but what you were thinking about, that might not be measuring depression necessarily. And so construct validity and content validity are very linked. And the construct validity adds the question, does this variable relate as it should to other variables of similar and different constructs? And so in construct validity, we're often concerned with how well an observed relationship between variables represents the causal process. So criterion validity is when we're measuring whether or not our measurement, if we compared it to another type of measurement, is actually consistent. So an example is if we're doing self-report surveys of drug use, and then we also triangulate that. Triangulate means to like revalidate it with an alternative source. And so if we also then compare those who responded to the survey with laboratory tests we have of their drug use, then that ensures that that measurement is accurate and of good quality. So ways of dealing with validity issues is really just logically thinking, does this have face validity? Is it logical? Is there sort of like an agreement about the construct of this image? You can use criteria related validity to compare to another different measure. And you can also create multiple measures or alternative measures for the same variable that you're considering. And we'll get into validity also appears in the type of method that we're using, not just the measurement as well. So just be aware of that and know that validity is going to come back up again in a different type of setting.